stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-show of the Network Plus Study Group. We've got all Network Plus questions today. Thanks for joining us in this pre-show section. For those of you that have sent me emails wondering, why aren't you ready to go when you start the stream? Because we're not ready to go when we start the stream. It's 10 minutes, usually about 10 minutes before I start the stream up, just to welcome people, get things going here, get my headphones on, I guess my in-ear monitors, if we use the term correctly. Make sure the stream is working. We do a camera check. But of course, if you're watching this on the replay, fast forward about 10 minutes and you'll be able to start at the very beginning. If this is a day after the live stream, you can go to the YouTube video description and there are timestamps all through that will show you exactly when we start the stream. You can jump to any particular question. You can jump all the way to the after show if you want. If you don't want to do any of the Q&A. Let's make sure recordings are up. They are. Recording on the streaming device. I'm looking at it. That's my streaming box, this little one at the bottom. I've got streaming going locally that I can see on my switcher. So we're good. We're good to have this going. So let's do a camera check really quick, because I've got this. That looks to be the right camera with the right settings. That's good. Camera 2. I need to change the way camera 3 looks. So let's change camera 3. Let's change this. We're going to change the way the screen looks a little so it looks better for you. It's all about you. Let's get that going. This can now be full screen. Now this fits a little bit more on the screen and makes it a little bit easier for you. For camera 3, I need to put myself in the camera. There we go. And we'll take that. Hi. That's me on camera 3 and on camera 4. We need to put a presentation up so you can see it. Like this one. Well, that's before the presentation's actually live, but that's okay. We will also put me in the picture on camera 4, and all of that is working. We'll go back to the bird cam shot. Get rid of me in the picture. A few more buttons in this version of the video switcher, but much more capable. Really impressive. Let's get rid of me again. There we go. All is good. We have plenty going on here. We are recording. You can kind of see the Cylons going down here. That's my multi-deck recorder. We've got all the streams going. Everything looks good. I need to check my analytics. Make sure that YouTube is happy with that, and they are. Hello, everyone on the YouTube. I've got the chat room up and running. You're welcome to join us. I should probably put a link in there that shows the live stream, Network Plus Study Group live stream. There it is. And I could probably put it in this one too. I should have copied and pasted that. But no, that would have been efficient. So we'll just type it in. There we go. That's a lot to type. Okay. We've got plenty of questions today. If you're joining us, it's all live Q&A. Everything you need to know about how to answer questions if you are watching this live is on my live page at professormesser.com/live. There are links there that will take you everywhere you need to go. So you'll see everything you need to see. It's all there. It's all good. We've got more content now on the site than ever before. Right now, there's all the Network Plus content is full and complete, although there's more coming. I've got a project underway to add you some more Network Plus content. We've also got, really right now, all of the A Plus content is being updated. So for those of you following along on the A Plus side, my 220-1001 course is complete. 220-1001 editing and posting is happening constantly. So you'll see those added as we go. Now, do I have everything I need in place? I've already done the podcast intro. I have streaming that's running. Recordings are going. I think we're good. Hello, Portland. Hello, Garland. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining. Could not do it without you. There is, what was I gonna? Where we're gonna do some. Really hope you release the Pop Quiz Network Plus Pop Quiz collection before I go to take the exam. I would love to get a Network Plus Pop Quiz collection going. I don't have one yet. It's on my list of things, and I'm hoping to have one created this year, as a matter of fact. So in this calendar year, you should see something. That's giving me plenty of time, isn't it? There's really, that's a big, wide ramp. There's plenty of room to do that. So, yeah. Plenty going on there. We've got also, I think we're done also with the hardware. We're almost done with the hardware in here. The only hardware that I am worried about that I may need to change is my monitor right here. But everything else, as far as what you see on the broadcast, is done. It's up, it's running, it's 100% now. I might have to change my chair. That's the only thing I might have to change. So that's one of those, yes, that we have to work through. It's the little things at this point. Let's make sure that we can actually get to our presentation. That might be good to have that there. I think I can do that. Oh yeah, and I'm in this chair all day, every day. So there's a lot has to happen here. You can't just get up one chair and be done. You have to find the right one. So like getting a piece of luggage, your computer case. Can't just buy anything off the street. So there you go. That's what I'm really worried about. Let's see if I get a green light. Nope. Wrong button. Green light. I love it. What else? Alabama's in the house. Hello, Alabama. Bama. We've got a few minutes left. Not long. I don't have a countdown. I used to have a countdown in front of me. I no longer have that. So I have to occasionally go to the screen. Here we go. So we've got 2 minutes, just under 2 minutes to go, and we'll get started. For those of you that are here, thanks for joining us. South Africa is here. Chicago is here. Florida's in the house. Jacksonville is here. A lot of Florida here. Jacksonville sunny today. It was not sunny yesterday. Now it is sunny. Akron, Ohio. Nigeria, welcome. A lot of you are attending this live all over the world. We've got you coming in from wherever you happen to be. We're so glad you're here. We've got plenty of Network Plus. This first hour will be Q&A. I'll open up the phone lines in the second hour. So if you're in Ohio, Nigeria, California, Iowa, Washington, D.C., or West Tennessee, or Nashville, you can always call in during that second hour or put questions in the chat room in the second hour. I'll answer from the chat room as well. You don't even have to call. People don't call anymore. They don't get on the phone anymore. So you don't have to. You can simply put in the chat room. If you are watching this on the YouTube side, you'll notice there is no chat room there. You'll need to go to professormesser.com/live. And that is the chat room I'm going through. I'll talk more about that as we get things started because I have just a couple of seconds to go. Well, that's the wrong thing. I wanted to go to this, and then I wanted to shift over to this. Let's do this. Okay, we've got all Network Plus for the next couple of hours. Let's get this thing going. We've got all of you here. Recordings are going. I think we're pretty good. That's good. I don't know if the help desk guy could absolutely call the web show. In fact, just open up the latest ticket and just tell me what the ticket is, and we'll just go through it. Yeah, you're right. That's probably a bad idea. Why don't we just do the study group, and we'll be fine. Here we go, everyone. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the April 2019 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group from the world headquarters here at Messer Studios. My name is James Messer. Thank you so much for joining us for this next hour of Network Plus Q&A. We're going to talk about everything relating to Network Plus. There's plenty to talk about relating to Network Plus. We've got questions that range through all of the different exam objectives. So thanks for joining us. And after this first hour is over, I'll open up the phone lines. We'll take questions from the chat room. It's really what I call the after show session. It's more of a hangout session, isn't it? I'm just hanging out. We'll just see what's going on. We're able to do this study group thanks to your ongoing support. Of course, every single one of my Network Plus videos, I have videos for an entire N10007 Network Plus course. They're all available for you to watch online. There's no registrations. There's no paywall. There's nothing you have to do. They're simply there for you to watch. You click on them, you can watch the entire course. Everything is there. I, of course, have questions that go out every Tuesday for Network Plus, my question of the week. You can always catch that on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. And as I put more questions out on the YouTube, on other videos out on YouTube, right now as A+ videos are being put out, you can always, of course, go to professormesser.com/YouTube. We release those videos constantly. There's always something going up on YouTube. So you're more than welcome to subscribe there to see exactly what's going on. We also have offline versions of these videos available. If you'd like to learn more about those, you can find out at professormesser.com/GetSec or GetNetPlus. This is the Network Plus study group. So the GetNet Plus will get you the Network Plus videos. It will get you audio versions in MP3 format. It will get you my course notes, and we'll talk more about course notes in just a bit. Learn more about that. I also have Q&A available on the website. I archive a number of questions from these study groups over at professormesser.com/popquiz. So if you are studying for your A+, your Network Plus, or your Security Plus exams, there are plenty of questions there that have been 100% written, qualified, and tested, checked, and by me. So maybe that's good or maybe that's not good. We'll find out. I think that's good. We go through all these questions. You give me feedback on the questions, and you tell me it's a good question, it's not a good question. So I think that you do more of the editing of the questions than sometimes I do. So that's really good. There is also an audio version available of this study group, available on replay in podcast form. You go to professormesser.com/podcast. I've got links there that you can use to point your podcast program so that whenever these audio versions are available, they are automatically downloaded to your mobile device. So you can listen in the car while you're working out or wherever you would like to do. This is also available to play from this page. So if you don't have a podcast program, you really just want to stream it in your browser, you can do that too. Find all those at professormesser.com/podcast. It usually takes me about a day, usually less than that, usually a couple hours after the study group, but I give myself a day. So we know that those are going to be available to you. Also, if you go back after about a day of time, my marketing manager, Lori, has to rewatch this entire study group. Hi, Lori. And she goes through and indexes everything we do into a comprehensive timestamp of everything that occurred. So you can go back over, I guess, the last year or so of study groups, and you can find exactly what we did and when we did it. So a number of you are saying, how do I jump around to the after show? How do I find a certain question? How can I go right to question one? This is an easy way to do it. Just expand out the video description and you'll see everything listed there. And that's a fantastic thing. It helps me find information later on, which is really good too. Today, we're going to talk all about Network Plus. It's going to be Network Plus, specifically the N10007 exam. That is the version number of the exam that CompTIA applies to the Network Plus. This is an exam that was released on March the 1st of 2018. This has been around not so long. This is a relatively new exam. We are 90 minutes long when you sit down and take this exam. You could get as many as 90 questions on the exam. There's also multiple choice questions, performance-based questions. We'll go through different versions of the types of questions that you will be running into when we go through the actual Q&A on this study group, which is really one of the great benefits by being here live, is that you can answer questions as we go. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, you're not able to do this. So this next section doesn't apply to you if you're not watching live. You can always go to our calendar on our website and find out when the next live event is. But if you are here live, go to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. There's also an app that you can download. Who doesn't want to do that? It's called the Socrative Student App. Get that at your favorite app store. It will ask you for a room name. I skip over that part if you're opening a new browser window, but if you've got the app, the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. Make sure you spell that right. There's a lot of O's and E's in there, so you got to make sure you don't mix those up because it has to be absolutely correct. And if you have opened up a new browser window and you have loaded up the app and you have put in the proper name and you've done whatever that is that you have done to get to this point, there will be a question waiting for you. And I want to show you this question that is waiting for you. The question is, a security administrator would like to limit the number of devices that can communicate through a switch interface. Which of the following would allow this functionality? You can't even see that in my list of things here. You can see it here, though. I need to fix my screen that is on my laptop, which is very different than the screen that's on the computer that actually makes this particular presentation. This is a question, by the way, from last month. So those of you that were here last month will probably get this one right. I call this my study group rewind question, the rewind question, and you should be able to remember what that is if you were here last month. A security administrator would like to limit the number of devices that can communicate through a switch interface. Which of the following would allow this functionality? Is it STP, FloodGuard, DHCP snooping, VLAN trunking, and BPDU guard? One of those is going to be right. And as you can see, as you are voting, the numbers will change dynamically on the screen here. So we can see that what people are voting on. In fact, 66% of you have said FloodGuard, 18% have said VLAN trunking, 9% have said BPDU guard. Which one is the right answer there? How can you limit the number of devices that can communicate through a switch interface? Well, one of the easiest ways to do this, and if you were here last month, then you were probably one of the folks that answered FloodGuard, because FloodGuard is the right answer. That is exactly how you can configure a switch to limit just how many devices, in this case, how many MAC addresses can communicate through a particular switch interface. So if you're trying to make sure that perhaps only one device can communicate through one switch interface, you can do that. If you want to limit this to 100 devices communicating through a switch interface, you can do that. You get to specify all of the details, and you can even put the exact MAC addresses that you would like to communicate through a particular interface. It's all in the FloodGuard. Once you go past that guard number that you put, whether you chose 1 or 100 or any number that you have available on that particular interface, once it exceeds that, you as the network administrator gets to decide what happens at that point. Do you get an alarm? Does it shut the interface off? You get complete control about that. So plenty of things that you would do with this. Now, why wouldn't it be one of these other options? Well, STP is not going to provide any functionality for limiting the number of devices that can communicate through an interface. Spanning tree protocol is designed to prevent loops on a switch network. It has nothing to do with controlling number of devices. DHCP snooping prevents other devices from becoming a DHCP server. So that's not going to prevent the number of devices communicating through a switch interface either. BPDU guard is a way to limit devices from sending BPDUs. And although that does prevent devices from sending a type of traffic, a type of protocol, it doesn't limit the number of devices that can communicate through a switch interface. And VLAN trunking doesn't do that either. VLAN trunking simply takes interfaces and puts them on the correct VLAN that are going through a single link, usually between switch to switch is a common way to do VLAN trunking. But VLAN trunking doesn't in any way limit the number of devices that can communicate through those VLANs. So that is not one of the right answers either. The only one that really applies here is FloodGuard. That's the only one that limits the number of devices that can communicate through a particular switch interface. So hopefully you've gotten the idea of how to get into the Q&A. You've now answered one of the first questions. Now we need to actually take some new questions and learn something new. Now on your exam, you will be asked many multiple choice questions just like the one we just went through. You are given a question, and then you're given a number of possible answers that you can answer. Usually it's A, B, C, or D. Pretty easy. It's a common way of answering questions. You've had this type of question and answer throughout your entire educational career. Now we have these new types of questions on the Network Plus exam, and you may not even be aware of this, but the first handful of questions that you will get on the Network Plus exam, not multiple choice, not even close to multiple choice. Much of the exam will be multiple choice, but this first set of questions will be anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to complete a command. They might provide a drag and drop where you have to drag things into a particular area. Maybe they ask you to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. You never know exactly what the performance-based question is going to be. But don't be thrown by this. This is one where a lot of people don't even realize these type of questions is here. They're getting 3 and 4 questions into this, and these are these relatively involved, in some cases, relatively complex questions when you compare them to multiple choice. And people get worried that the whole exam is going to be this way. But fortunately, it's just the first section of questions that you're going to run into. And I say about a handful. It could be more than 5. It could be less than 5. But I think that's somewhere in there. Well, I have a multiple choice question for you later. Right now, I want to pretend that we're sitting down for the exam and we're going to go through a performance-based question. The first question of every study group is always a performance-based question. This one is a fill-in-the-blank question because I think those are kind of hard. So let's do a fill-in-the-blank question. And this is one where you will need to put in the proper answer, type in the proper answer in Socrative. Here is your performance-based question of the day. And it deals with OSI layers. Which OSI layer would be most associated with the following? And I have 5 different things that you need to associate with this OSI layer. So let's step through all 5 of these. The first one is a network administrator configures a static route to the internet. What OSI layer is most associated with that? The next option is a network management program is showing an access denied message. What OSI layer would most be associated with that? Option C is, or this third option we need to determine what OSI layer is associated with, is that a network interface card is reporting CRC errors. What OSI layer is that? The fourth one is the server administrator has changed the web server port from 80 to 8080. What OSI layer is most associated with that? And the last one is a switch floods a frame with an unknown destination MAC address to all interfaces. So there are your 5 different things that can happen every day on the network. I would think it's very common to see these things occur on your network. We need to know what OSI layer is really at work here. So let's step through all 5 of these again for those of you listening in. A network administrator configures a static route to the internet. A network management program is showing an access denied message. A network interface card is reporting CRC errors. The server administrator has changed the web server port from 80 to 8080. And a switch floods a frame with an unknown destination MAC address to all interfaces. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Remember, as a standing rule in our study groups, we don't answer in the chat room. We don't put any hints in the chat room. So make sure you don't do that. We're going to pretend that we are sitting down for the exam. We have no tools available in front of us. We are not going to Google. No Googling. I still don't have a no Googling screen. I need to put that up, don't I? No Googling. And then now we're gonna take a guess. If we don't know, please take a guess. It doesn't hurt on the exam to take a guess. You aren't penalized for getting a question wrong on the exam. You're only gain points if you get it right. So it doesn't hurt to take a guess. You don't lose anything if you take a guess. This is a great way to do it. OSI model is something that is really a difficult topic to grasp because it is so vague. It's a model. It doesn't even exist in the real world. And if you've never worked with networks before, you don't have any experience with the protocols going across the network, you've never performed the packet capture and seen the different layers that are broken out in the packet capture, then you may not be able to really focus in on these things very quickly. But once you get some experience understanding really what's happening across the wire, this will become much more easier for you. It's a great way to communicate about what you're seeing happen, a great way to communicate with other IT professionals about where you're seeing problems occur and how you may be able to fix them. So understanding this is an important part of being able to simply communicate and describe what's happening over the network. We use the OSI model all the time in the industry. When you start working in any role in IT, this becomes a common way to communicate. A lot of people have said, they've sent me notes and saying, OSI model, we don't use OSI anymore. That is outdated. No, that is not outdated. The OSI protocol is outdated. Nobody uses the OSI protocol any longer, but this model that helps describe communication is one we use all the time. So there's a difference. The OSI model is not the same thing as the OSI protocol. You may see that. So keep that in mind. Those are two different things. Let's step through each one of these. I'm watching the answers come in as you're typing them in, you're submitting them. And some of you are spot on with these, by the way. Some of you have really got the idea of the OSI layers down. Let's step through each one and break down what the layer is and why it would be operating at that layer. So let's first start with the first question, which is a network administrator configures a static route to the internet. This is something, by the way, if you're working with routers, you're on the edge of your network, you're configuring a firewall, or you're configuring a router that's connected to the internet. And this is a very common task. This is like your first task to make sure that everybody can communicate to the internet. You go into your router and you tell your router that if anybody needs to get routed to the internet, they go out this interface to my ISP. Well, that is a layer 3 operation. You are putting in the route that is going to be used, which effectively says if anybody is on this network that is going to a particular network address, which in the case of the internet would probably be a 0.0.0.0 address. It's to send all traffic with this default route out to the internet. And since that's happening on a router, you should automatically think that that's a layer 3 function. Anything dealing with routing or IP addresses is something happening at layer 3. You'll notice that this is, even though I said firewall, because then the question came in the chat room, you said firewall. Don't firewalls operate at layer 4 or even layer 7? They do. There are firewalls that do operate at layer 4 and layer 7. They make their decisions on whether they should allow or not allow traffic based on port number or based on the application that's going over the network. But for static routing or for anybody creating a route, the only part that is evaluated when routing information is IP address. The route table doesn't care about port numbers. The router doesn't care about what application is flowing. It just sends traffic to the right IP address. That's all it cares about. So that's why when we talk about routing, we're always talking about layer 3. When we talk about anything associated with layer 3, we're always talking about routers and IP addresses. Our second is a network management program is showing an access denied message. I just got that earlier today. My access was indeed denied. A network management program is showing an access denied message. The only way it would have been able to tell me that my access is denied is if I'd asked for access, perhaps even provided a username and password of some kind. Maybe it's evaluating my access based on some other criteria, but whatever application I'm trying to run is not working properly. It's telling me I don't have access to that. And that is a layer 7 function. That's an application layer function. We've had to go all the way up the stack. This isn't about IP address. It's not about port number. It's not about operating at that layer. This is going all the way up and something is making a decision. An application is making a determination that your access is denied. So if that's an access denied message, and in fact, it even tells you here a network management program. So you should automatically be thinking, oh, a program is doing this. That's an application. So that's why we chose on this one, layer 7. The next option is a network interface card is reporting CRC errors. And this one is going to be controversial because it always is controversial when we're talking about network interface cards. And network interface cards, and I probably could accept 2 different options here, but there's really only one that's right. That's cheating. You can't do that. There's only one right answer, but you'll take credit for 2? Probably would. The real issue here is we're seeing CRC errors. Now, it doesn't really matter what's telling us that there are CRC errors. The fact is we're getting cyclical redundancy check errors. That type of error generally means that signal coming across the network is not making it to our side. It's getting corrupted somewhere along the way. So we're, of course, not able to make this happen. This is a layer 1 issue. Now, many of you will say, but wait, a network interface card is reporting it. Network interface cards are layer 2 devices, or are they layer 1 devices? And this is a constant configuration or constant challenge that we have with how we're looking at the OSI layer. is some people feel that network interface cards are layer 1 devices. Some people feel network interface cards are layer 2 devices. They are indeed layer 2 devices. Network interface cards absolutely are layer 2 devices. But from a layer 1 perspective, we're talking about the errors that we're receiving. We're seeing CRC errors. The CRC errors are there because the signal is corrupted when it gets to us. The signal going across the network is layer 1. Sometimes we even refer to the cabling itself as a layer 1 issue. The cable is layer 1. Technically the signal going over the cable, but effectively the same thing. That's exactly the way it operates. A lot of content that you will find designates the network interface card as operating at layer 1, and that's demonstrably false. That's not even close to being correct. The signal is layer 1. The ones and zeros going across the wire or the fiber are layer 1. Once it gets to a device, especially a network interface card, which, by the way, does have a MAC address associated with it, we know MAC addresses are layer 2. And that's why I put network interface cards properly at OSI layer 2. We can all fight about that later. I look forward to your cards and letters. Always. So that's one of those that I think will just be a continuing conversation. The next option here is the network administrator, the server administrator, has changed the web server port from 80 to 8080. Why is he doing that? Well, that doesn't matter. There's probably a lot of reasons why someone would do that, but they've changed the web server port from 80 to 8080. Anytime we see port numbers, you should automatically think layer 4. Layer 4 is the layer that we're really dealing with whenever there is a TCP port number, a UDP port number, or we're talking generically about TCP or UDP. That is an operation that is occurring at layer 4. So if we're changing a server from port 80 to 8080, we're changing things at layer 4. Now, there is a web server in place here. So it says web server. Why isn't that layer 7? Because the operation that's taking place here is not a layer 7 operation. We're not changing Apache so that it changes where the default web server page happens to be or the directory that it's using. We're simply changing the network communication to get to the server. We're changing the port numbers, and port numbers are layer 4. That's how that does operate. And so the last one is a switch floods a frame with an unknown destination MAC address to all interfaces. Now, this is, by the way, a very common occurrence on a switch. If a switch doesn't have a destination MAC already listed in its list of MAC addresses, then it doesn't know where to send the frame. It has to make a decision, where am I going to send this frame if I don't know where it's going? Well, the answer on the switch is, I'll just send it to everybody. And so it floods every address, every port on the switch, except the one it received it from, because obviously it knows it's not at that one. So if there are 12 interfaces on the switch, it floods it out the other 11 interfaces, just so it can perhaps hope that that particular frame makes its way to the proper destination. And hopefully once it is received, that destination will reply back and the switch will go, aha, there you are. I'm going to add you to my list now. That's a normal common function on a switch. Everything about this, by the way, is all operating at layer 2. This is all MAC address related. Anytime a switch doesn't know a MAC address, and then that's your magic word on this one is MAC address. MAC addresses operate at OSI layer 2. So this is one. In fact, the switch has no idea about IP addresses. Switches have no idea about port numbers. They don't know what application is flowing through them. Switches are only concerned with MAC addresses and getting information from point A to point B based on the MAC address inside of that frame. Clearly only layer 2. Can't argue with me on that one. Of course you can. You can always argue with me on these. I look forward to your cards and letters. This is one where OSI layer, as I mentioned, don't be concerned if you didn't get all 5 of these right. The OSI layer is a nebulous, non-physical being that can sometimes take a while to step through all of these. So this is one where you will get it. And by the way, in my OSI layer video, we grab a packet capture and I step you through the packet capture decode to show you how you can break out the OSI layer in a packet capture. With a lot of people, that suddenly clicks for them and they realize, oh, that's how this is laid out. And that's, by the way, exactly why we always refer to the OSI layer, because it happens to match up with the actual packet traffic quite nicely. So that's a good place to go for reference. Now, those in the chat room ask a very good question. If I got some of these right and I got some of these wrong, how is that calculated then on the exam? How does the exam determine this? Does that mean I get them all wrong? Does it mean I get all of them right? Do I get partial credit? How does that work? And unfortunately, CompTIA hasn't really spent a lot of time telling us a lot of detail about how they grade the exam. In fact, they're very non-specific, intentionally non-specific about how they grade the exam. They don't want you to know. They don't want anybody to know how they grade the exam. In fact, the exam itself is a score between 100 and 900, and you have to get a minimum score to pass. So this is one where it's already an odd scoring program. We're not really sure how that's done. What they have said, perhaps for the very first time in a very long time, they have mentioned that in some cases on the exam, you could possibly get partial credit. So that's as far as they went, which is to say they weren't really telling us much information there at all, were they? They really weren't helping very much with understanding exactly what they're talking about with this. Whenever I start breaking these out, by the way, and trying to figure out how do they grade it, there's no way to tell. You just can't do it intentionally. So don't worry so much that they're not telling you that what this happens to be. That's okay. They're grading it the best they can. You should just focus on making sure you get as much of this right as you can. You're never going to know when you get partial credit anyway. So let that out into the universe. Just release it. Don't worry about it anymore. All you should do, focus on knowing everything you can, and you're going to do fine with this. So I think that's where you should focus on with all of these. Let's do some multiple choice then. Let's indeed get away from having these performance-based questions and the worry about knowing whether we're getting partial credit or not. Let's jump into A, B, C, or D, or E. I think that would be a good step to go. So here's our next question of the study group, which asks, a network engineer is connecting two switches together in the data center. Which type of cable would be the best choice for this connection? What type of cable would be the best choice for this connection? I have some options available to you. A network engineer is connecting two switches directly together in the data center. What type of cable would be the best choice for this connection? Would it be crossover, straight through, serial, loopback, or shielded? Those are your 5 cable types. A network engineer connecting two switches directly together in the data center. Which type of cable would be the best choice? Would it be crossover, straight through, serial, loopback, or shielded? Those are your 5 options. Remember not to comment in the chat room. No guesses in the chat room. No hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA right there at the bottom of the screen. professormesser.com/QA, or go to your Socrative student app and you can answer right in there as well. And so that's where you want to go with this. There's really only one answer here. Some of you are trying to hedge your bets, and I will not allow it. You are not allowed to hedge your bets in the chat room. So no hints in the chat room and no hedging of bets. And I'll talk more about that once we're done here. And it's not a tricky question. This is an exact, straight ahead, could not be more obvious answer. So make sure. So some of you, yep, flag it, next. That's not what you should be doing. That, by the way, is a very good strategy. Lucas in the chat room says, flag it and go to the next one. Lucas is actually spot on. We can't do that on these, can we? On the study group, we don't have a way to flag the question. On your actual exam, there's a little flag button at the top of the screen. You can flag the question, click next, and just go the next thing. And at any time, you can bring up a page that shows you all of the questions you've answered, what you answered them with, and if you flagged any of them. And you can simply click and go back to any question on the exam you want to perhaps go through that question again, maybe when you have more time, or maybe when you could start parsing out things a little bit better. That function, by the way, pretty unique to CompTIA. Cisco, for instance, doesn't let you do that. On a Cisco exam, you take a question, you answer the question, and when you click next, you're done. You can't go back. Whatever you did in the past is over. You have set your fate in stone, and you go to the next question. So that's one of those that you really don't have a choice. So that's one whenever we start looking at what these possibilities are. This is one that really helps quite a bit. In fact, I tell people as a strategy, jump over all the performance-based questions at the beginning, finish your multiple choice, and then maybe come back to the performance-based. That's what I do with these. The question here, and let's see how we did with this one, was that a network engineer is connecting two switches directly together in the data center. Which type of cable would be the best choice for this connection? The questions are just as important as the answers are on these exams. Make sure you read them very, very carefully. Making you read a question is not a trick. You have to read the question. Let's see how we did with this one. 59% said crossover. 29% said straight through. And then kind of a tie for third with 3 and 4% apiece between serial, loopback, or shielded. So it's really between one and the other. And if we go with the majority, a majority of you said crossover, but nearly 30%, almost a third of you, said straight through. So this is really where the conversation was leading us, by the way, in the chat room, where people said, wait a second, this could be more than one. It's a trick. Run for your lives. This is not a trick. There's only one cable here that would be the best choice for this connection. And the best choice for this connection is going to be a crossover cable. Whenever you're connecting two like devices, such as one switch to a switch, such as a workstation to a workstation, always use a crossover cable. Now, we'll talk about why that's a good idea in just a moment. So in the technical terms, we call this connecting perhaps an MDI device to an MDI device, or an MDIX device to an MDIX device. Those are when you would use a crossover cable. If you're connecting an MDI to an MDIX or an MDIX to an MDI, we use a straight through. So that's why this happens. Now, the thing that's going to throw people every time with this is that you may have even had two switches. You connected them together with a straight through cable and it worked fine. That's because many modern devices will try to figure out what type of cable you're using and will automatically cross over if it needs to. And it does that because we are not smart enough to use the right cables. And instead of dealing with phone calls from the end user, we've implemented this functionality within the Ethernet specification to try to figure out a way to automatically do this for us. One of the problems you have with this, though, and this will bite you sometimes, is that this MDIX, auto MDIX process, this process of determining whether it should do straight through or crossover, is not 100%. This is one where sometimes bad chipsets, bad hardware, badly developed devices will auto MDIX on a straight through cable, but it turns out it doesn't do a very good job of it and either has slower throughput or intermittent connectivity. So from my perspective, I want to go with the sure thing. I want to go with the case where I'm never going to run into a problem, where I'm absolutely going to know that the connectivity between those devices is always going to be up and running and 100%. And so I want to use a crossover cable if I'm connecting two switches together. That is the right answer in this case. Those of you that did answer that 61% for crossover, that is the right answer. Now, 28% of you said straight through. And for the most part, straight through would probably work for you. In fact, you probably have devices that are not going to run into type of chipset incompatibilities. It's not going to have a problem with this, and you'll be able to run a straight through and it's okay. But that wasn't the question. The question asked you for the best choice for this connection, and the best choice for this connection is a crossover cable. So that's one that you deal with. And having all of those there. This is one where it's not one where you're really dealing with one way or the other. There's a right way to do it and a way that might work is how I approach this particular problem. And this is one where you do run into this scenario. So those of you, by the way, that are trying to figure out crossover straight through, There is a chart on the videos and a chart in the course notes that breaks this out. So you can look at, there's only 3 or 4 different scenarios, right? So that's one where you would really look at all of these and figure out the details. So hopefully you've now got your cabling down. You understand where to go with this. And you know which one would be the right one in this scenario. Let's do another question. This is one where we're kind of getting outside the scope of the technical world and getting more into the non-technical world, which unfortunately for many of us really is part of what we do on our normal job. This question asks, a security administrator is creating a series of rules and regulations for employee internet use. Which of the following would be the best way to notify employees of these rules? We have a few options available. Would it be NDA? Would it be EULA? Would it be BYOD? Would it be MOTD? Or would it be AUP? All of these are real things, by the way. I didn't make up any of these abbreviations. So a security administrator is creating a series of rules and regulations for employee internet use. Which of the following would be the best way to notify employees of these rules? NDA, EULA, BYOD, MOTD, or AUP? You've got 5 options available there for you. Which one of these would it be? Hopefully you know the answer. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Right there at the bottom of the screen. That's where you want to go to find out the answer to this particular question. This is one that you will run into. In fact, usually they've already got the rules and regulations. You show up at your job, you're ready to start your new position, and they put in front of you the list of rules and regulations for employee internet use, and at the top of the page is written the title of one of those answers. NDA, EULA, BYOD, MOTD, or AUP. Which one is it? That's where it comes from. That's the best hint I can give you, which is really no hint at all. Sorry. That's just where it went. That's what we did with it to see how we work through these. Let's see how you work through it. Let's look at our answers and see how you did with these. 58% said AUP. So we're close to that. I try to get 50% answering at least one question, but is that the right answer is the real question, because 23% of you said EULA. Aha. So now we've got a little bit of a conflict. And again, kind of a tie for third with 6 and 7% apiece from NDA, BYOD, and MOTD. So which one of these things would it be if we were trying to figure out what set of rules we would like to use? Well, one of the best ways to inform your end users of the rules and the regulations is to provide them with a set of the acceptable use policies, the AUP. And this is a great thing from a security perspective, because you want to be able to tell someone, here's how you can properly use your phone and the things you should not be doing, and your tablet, and your laptop, and your desktop computer, and maybe the phone on your desk as well. Anything that touches the technology, what is the appropriate way to use that? Now, it may seem obvious what the appropriate way to use this technology would be. Unfortunately, not everyone feels that way. And as a former systems engineer for a firewall company, I can tell you that we walk into many different places. Part of my job was to set these devices up on evaluation. So a customer didn't have this technology. We would walk into their network. We would plug it into their network internet connection very commonly. We turn it on, and then we'd see what it would find. And if you're familiar at all with next generation firewalls, they see everything. They know exactly what sites you're going to. They know the categorization of sites you're going to. They know the applications that are flowing over that network. They can even decrypt SSL traffic, look into that information to tell you what application and what URL you are going to, and the end user in many cases would never know the difference. They are remarkable pieces of technology, but very often we would have people that would indeed violate the acceptable use policies. They had certain things that they should be doing or should not be doing on the network, and they were not following those. Other people in the chat room going, wait a second, it decrypted SSL? It certainly does. Very remarkable. There's a section on my Security Plus videos, in fact, that talks about SSL decryption and how that works and how you have no idea it's going on. Acceptable use policies cover everything then, really any piece of technology that you will run into. This is, by the way, what you would finally use, even though it seems obvious, if someone constantly is misusing this and it becomes an issue where you need to decide that they no longer need to work for the organization, or perhaps there needs to be some type of penalty for them using their technology in this way, you need to at least say that, well, you saw the list, you knew this was wrong, you signed the AUP, therefore you knew that this was the wrong thing to do. It's more of a legal issue in some cases to have that there, because I think we all know what the proper use of technology is. Sometimes there's a gray area, so the AUP can clean that up as well. So 58% of you that said the acceptable use policy, 58% of you were absolutely correct. Well done with that. Now, 23% of you said EULA. This is an end user license agreement. An end user license agreement is what a software publisher provides to the end user that says, this is how you can use this software. It doesn't at all talk about what type of rules and regulations are acceptable for using the software. It only talks about how the software is licensed to you and the proper use of that license. So that would not be something that you would put rules about employee internet use. Microsoft provides you as the end user a EULA to run Windows. Apple provides you a EULA. Here, Mr. End User, here's our EULA for you using Mac OS. That's the one. The NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. That is generally a contract you would sign that says anything we're about to talk about, you can't tell anyone else. It's a secret. It stays in this room. Non-disclosure agreement, that obviously would not apply here. The BYOD, your bring your own device, that is something that really describes how people bring their personal phones or tablets into the workplace and how they are used. Again, that has nothing to do with how you use them. It's more about where that device is coming from. And the message of the day, the MOTD, the message of the day is this message that pops up on the screen when you start to log into a device. That doesn't really talk about rules and regulations. It might tell you that, hey, if you're about to log in, you better be a proper authority or an authorized user of this particular service before logging in, because if you're not, we're going to come over and make angry words at you. I'm guessing. Is that what they do? I think that's what they do. So the proper answer here is indeed the acceptable use policy, the AUP. 58% of you got that one absolutely right. So I'm glad you learned a new one. Those of you that didn't know this, don't worry. I try to make these questions so that half of you know it and half of you've never heard of it before. That way, if this does come up on the exam, now you know it. Wouldn't be good if we all just knew 100% of these questions and we were done. And I don't think anybody would watch this anyway. What's the point of even being here if that's the case? But no, there's plenty of things that you need to know about. Fortunately, I've put them all together into one single document. Of course, I put them all together into an entire series of videos, but not everybody has time to go through all the videos, or maybe you just don't take good notes when you're going through the videos. Plus, there are a lot of charts and a lot of graphics in my videos. It's sometimes difficult to get all the details of those charts and graphics into one single place. So I've done it for you. I've taken all of the text, I've taken all the graphics, I've taken all of the details from every single one of my Network Plus videos, and I put them into one single document. These are my Network Plus course notes. Everything about subnetting and VLANs and security and encryption and proxies and topologies and everything else is all in these course notes. It doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace the videos. It doesn't replace a lot of hands-on or good Q&A. It's another one of those types of things you can use to help you as a study guide. Maybe after you've gone through the book and after you've gone through the video, you want one concise summary of everything. And that's what the course notes are. I've got the course notes on my screen right here. It's just a PDF file that you can download immediately and have available on your desktop, on your laptop, on your mobile device. It's a PDF, so it works on anything, and you can put it on all of your devices if you would like to. It's your device. You can see details here. It goes through my Common Ports video, all of the text from my Common Ports video, and then the entire chart from my Common Ports video. The understanding the OSI model, we talked about the OSI model earlier, and all of the things you need to think about. At layer 2 is MAC address. At layer 3 is the routing layer. At layer 4 is TCP and UDP. At layer 7 is the application. All of the things we just talked about. It's right there. And then I even broke out my introduction to internet. It just goes on and on and on through this chart. This is a single book. It is one that's available $20. Every penny of this goes back to keeping the website up and running. I also have a physical version of the same content. It's nothing new about this. It's the same information that you get in the PDF. It's just in a dead tree version. But it's a nice printed version. This is high quality. This is a perfect bound, like a softback book would be. This is full of color in the book. It's high quality paper. I wouldn't publish this if it wasn't nice. So if you get the printed version, I will mail this to you, and you get the PDF version for free immediately. So you don't have to wait on the mail. You'll at least have the digital version available. If you want to learn more about that, it's available at professormesser.com/NPCN7, the Network Plus Course Note 7 for the N10007 Network Plus exam. For those of you, by the way, that have sent me emails and said, I want to help support the site, can I donate something to the site? I don't take donations. I prefer to give you something for your money. And this, in my mind, is a good way to do that. Thank you for your ongoing support with that. We really couldn't keep things running without you. We're able to do these live streams and make more videos because of your support. So thank you so much. Let's do more videos, though. I've got more questions to go in this one. We've got plenty of QA to go. We've got some time left, so let's run through another one of this one. This one is a very common method of asking questions on the exam because it's lots of text. So let's step through this particular question and see if we know the answer. And here's the question. A company has discovered that an internal database of customer information has been published to the internet. The security team has determined that the database was copied to a USB drive and released by a disgruntled employee. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? And I have 5 options available for you. Would it be rogue access point? Would it be social engineering? Would it be logic bomb? Would it be insider threat? Or would it be man in the middle? Which of the following would describe this attack type? Let's go through this scenario again. A company has discovered that an internal database of customer information has been published to the internet. The security team has determined that the database was copied to a USB drive and released by a disgruntled employee. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Rogue access point, social engineering, logic bomb, insider threat, man in the middle. It's got to be one of those. Could it be more than one of those? Probably not. Probably one of those. This is timely, isn't it? Since they just released the indictment for someone in our federal government that took private information and copied it to a USB drive and took it out and then ran into this scenario. This is something that is a real world. I wrote this before that came out. I should probably be careful about what I'm writing for these questions if they're suddenly turning into real world stuff. This is one you should know this attack type as well. There are a number of attack types you have to know on the Network Plus exam. There's a larger number of attack types you have to know on the Security Plus exam. So you do need to know what these attack types are and how they're categorized, especially if you plan on stopping them. How do you do that? So make sure you're familiar with that. So this is one where, and a good question, somebody in the chat room said, wait, how'd they know it was copied to a USB drive? Have you ever looked at your Windows Event Viewer? And you would know how they knew it was copied to a USB drive. Everything is logged in Windows. Everything. More than you actually even realize. You can absolutely know when people copy information to a USB drive. Very easy to go back in your logs and make that determination. Let's see. Yes, Windows tells you everything that you're doing. How did we do on this one? This is one I think I probably failed as a question and an answer because 96% of you said insider threat. None of you bit on any of the other possible answers. 3% said man in the middle, 2% said logic bomb, 1% said social engineering, 0% said rogue access point. Indeed, in this case, it was an insider threat. This was the insider that was doing it. Obviously, it's one where you really only want to give people the amount of access they need to do their job and no more. But unfortunately, people are able to do this. Now, in the case of the news this week, it was a federal employee in the Senate offices in Washington that got a key from an associate, went into a senator's office, and put keyloggers on all of their keyboards. Can you imagine? Then went back in the office, got the keyloggers, took all their information, had their passwords, had everything they typed in for the week or more, much longer time frame. And that indictment came out. Actually, I think it was a plea bargain that came out this week where this person will be going to federal prison for at least 2 years or more. So don't do this, kids. Don't be an insider threat. This can only be a bad thing for this. And having that, yes, that's why I put USB in the question was some of you are trying to parse out my thinking here. That's why rogue access point would not be the right answer for that one. That's how I thought maybe some of you would choose man in the middle. Wait, there's a guy in the middle that's got the information and he put it on the internet, so he was the man in the middle, but that's not what a man in the middle is at all. That's indeed, in this case, the only answer that is the right answer is the one you just watched that said insider threat for having that there. So if we fool no one, let's see if I do a better job on this next question that we will immediately jump to in an effort to hopefully save face. And the next question is, a network administrator has been asked to troubleshoot an issue with a web server that hosts the domain www.example.com. Obviously not a real website, but you just go with it. Which of these tools should the administrator use to identify the IP address associated with this website? And the possible answers are ipconfig, dig, TCP dump, netstat, and route. The question again is, a network administrator has been asked to troubleshoot an issue with a web server that hosts the domain www.example.com. Which of these tools should the administrator use to identify the IP address associated with this website? Would it be ipconfig, dig, TCP dump, netstat, or route? Which one would it be? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, or you already have your app open on your mobile device. For your Socrative student app, you can plug in your answer, submit it, and let's see how we did. Yes, this is one where you will run into this quite a bit as well. The people will give you a ticket, a tech support ticket. They will give you as little information as possible. It's now up to you to figure out what type of information it's going to be. So this is one where we definitely need to know what this one happens to be. So this is, we need to identify, and we're very specific with this question, by the way. Make sure you read through all of the details of every question. Make sure you go through what all of these happen to be. But yes, your ticket is probably going to be the internet is broken, as Bob from accounting is saying in the chat room. Of course, the internet's broken. Okay, but did you get a message? Was there a screen? Do you have a screenshot? Do you have something? Can you give me to tell me more? Often that is what the next step in processing tickets is I'm sorry you run into this. Tell me more. Fill me in on the details. You've got some users that are really good about that, and some users that just, oh, you need to know stuff to be able to fix the problem? Oh, did not know that. Did not know that. That's one where also helps if you can maybe do some research yourself. And that's really what this question is about, is you haven't really been given all the details. Let's do some research ourselves and see what we can find. And it's usually much faster doing that yourself and having those there. Let's see how we did. We've got a number of answers that have come through. So let's have a look at the answers that have come through. And thankfully, I'm saved. A reprieve. This one we are completely torn. We have no idea what the answer is. I'm so happy. Well, there's something not quite right about that. But here we are anyway. 34% of you said dig. Not a majority, but that is the largest percentage of answers that we have at 34%. We've got a tie for second at 25% apiece of ipconfig and netstat. And then 15% of us said route and TCP dump. Now, this is another question that we have looked at and trying to get an understanding of exactly what we should use to be able to understand IP addresses associated with this website. One of the things that is a bit of a challenge is being able to identify some of these details. Now, it may be the case, in fact, with this question that you may not even be able to connect to this website from your particular site. In fact, you might have a URL filter up that doesn't even allow this. There needs to be the best possible way, the best possible answer to choose. whenever you're looking at this. And for this particular question, the best possible answer is dig. We want to be able, if we only have, the only thing we have in the world is a domain name with perhaps a host on it, like www.example.com, how can we gather information about that domain, including the IP address that should be associated with that domain? Well, one way to do that is to ask the name server, hey, if I was to connect to www.example.com, what IP address would I be connecting to? And it will tell you. Normally, NSLookup was our way to do this in the past. In fact, many of you probably still use NSLookup to be able to do this. It is a functionality, a utility that has been deprecated. That's the term they use to say it's played out. It's too old. It is old school, and we will not be using it anymore because it's old and clunky, and we don't like it. And you know how to use it, so we're going to change your world. It's like going to the grocery store and they moved everything around. Well, we're moving everything around. Now you have to use dig. Dig is what you want to be able to use. Dig is certainly available to use. It is one that is available in many distributions of Linux. It's available on Mac OS. It's starting to be available in Windows versions, but you can also download a version of dig available from isc.org/download/bind. There is a dig executable in there that you can run in Windows. And it actually, dig's kind of better. It's better than NSLookup. I really like NSLookup. It's really easy because I've used it for so long, but actually dig is a little nicer, especially in its output, shows you a little more information, a little more flexible. I can see why they've decided to move everybody to dig because it does show information. This is the best way to start with. So forget you connecting to this particular site. You should be doing as much research as you can without actually connecting to any location. In fact, this is the one. What tools should you use to identify the IP address associated with this website? The best way to do that is to pull the information directly from the name service, because it will tell you exactly what IP address should be associated with this web server, whether you're filtered, whether you're not filtered. If there's a URL filter in your site that doesn't allow you to get there, it doesn't matter. I can still dig. I can still do a domain request and see what that IP address happens to be. Now, why would it not be ipconfig? Ipconfig is a tool that we would pull up at the command prompt that tells you IP information. But it tells you IP information about your machine on your workstation. It doesn't tell you about the IP information on the remote device. So that would not be the best one to use. So let's try another one that you said, which was netstat. We open up a command line, we type netstat, and we're able to see every device that we're connected to. Except the question said nothing that we had connected to example.com. Nothing in there that said that we had ever made a connection to example.com. So netstat would show us all the connections that are currently active on our computer, but it would not show us things that we've never connected to. So that would not be the correct answer either. The route command will tell you what your routing table is. There's also, depending on the operating system, a lot of functionality you have with the route command. But that is to show you when you send traffic to a particular IP subnet, where does it go? From your machine's perspective, does it go out this Ethernet connection, or this wireless connection? It will tell you. But it doesn't tell you anything about what an IP address of a remote device happens to be, and that was the question we were asked here. And finally, TCP dump, which would give us all of the packets associated with the communication going over the network, or a subset of those if we set a filter. TCP dump also would not tell us the IP address associated with that website unless at some point we started to connect to that website. And from a security perspective, that should not be the first thing you're doing ever. From a networking perspective, that should not be the first thing that you're doing ever. You have no idea what's on that site. Just bringing up a browser and connecting to a site, probably not the best idea. I'll refer you back to the end user, to your, not the end user license agreement, to your acceptable use policy, your AUP. Almost did it. Almost got the question wrong. So your acceptable use policy, you may have already violated it by going to a website that you know nothing about, and that would be the problem. So don't do that. Don't ping the domain. Don't connect to the domain. The first thing and the best way to identify the IP address associated with the website is dig. Now, why, by the way, would that not be the right thing? What if internally I did ping it? What if I did connect to it and then I looked at netstat, and then I looked at TCP dump. That's one way I could do it, except what if there's a proxy in place? The IP address you're going to see is your proxy. You're not actually going to see the IP address of that web server. So that's not a 100% good choice either. So the only way to really know what the ultimate, and quite honestly, the best IP address you're going to get is from the name server. In reality, the IP address of that device is probably something different. There's probably another proxy somewhere along the way, a reverse proxy doing this. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's do another question, though. We've been doing this lately. We've been going to overtime. So here's our overtime question of the month. During the initialization process, a desktop voice over IP phone uses TFTP to receive a configuration file. What port should be configured in the firewall to allow this traffic to pass? Would the answer be UDP 161? Would it be TCP 20 and TCP 21? Would it be UDP 69? Would it be TCP 22? Or would it be TCP 5060? So our question is, during the initialization process, a desktop VoIP phone uses TFTP to receive a configuration file. What port should be configured in the firewall to allow this traffic to pass? Is it UDP 161, TCP 20 and TCP 21, UDP 69, TCP 22, or TCP 5060? Let's see. Oh, you're making your decisions on whether to schedule Network Plus based on how the overtime question goes. I can't wait to see how this turns out. Probably not the best termination, but maybe it will help you. Maybe you'd like to know. It's not a tricky question. Everybody says it's a tricky question. It's not a tricky question. There's no trick here at all. This is very straightforward. This tells you exactly what you need to know to answer the question, and there's only one possible answer. This is not even one of those that would be, what is the best answer? This is not even a best answer. This is either right or it's not right. Yeah, this is kind of a gimme. I don't like doing a lot of these memorization questions, but I think this is a good one to go with. So this is one where you do have to know these different things. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these particular port numbers. Port numbers are asked of you in the A+, the Network Plus, the Security Plus exam, and by the way, just when you're working, always, throughout your career, you have to know port numbers. So this is one you do have to know. Hopefully this will be one you know. Hopefully 50% of you will know this. We're gonna figure out what it happens to be. Now, we do want to make sure we don't put the answer or any hits in the chat room. Make sure you're familiar with the question that's being asked and the possible answers. Make sure you go through that. We're going to see what we can do about answering this one, and let's see how you did. You're too busy right now Googling, so I'm going to jump right to the answer before you can put in the answer from your Google. And 51% we have hit right on the number I was hoping to hit on, said UDP 69, but is it really? This is the thing we've always run into in other study groups, by the way, where we've hit 50% and it's been wrong. But is that the right answer? 50% said UDP 69, 19% said TCP 20 and TCP 21. 12% said TCP 5060, 9% said TCP 22, 8% said UDP 61. So which one is it going to be when we go through this? Let's talk about this particular question. It is asking, or saying that a desktop VoIP phone uses TFTP to receive a configuration file. This, by the way, is a very common way for voice over IP phones to receive a configuration. You know, if you've ever seen these VoIP phones, they're fantastic. They used to be that the phone that was put at your desk that you plug in has a particular configuration, and that is the phone that's always going to be at that desk. You can't take that phone and move it to another desk and have that phone continue to be your phone. It doesn't work that way. The phones were associated with the interface that you were plugging, the wire that you were plugging into it. So what's nice about these VoIP phones is they just receive the configuration that's appropriate for you. You just take your phone with you wherever you happen to go. You plug it in, it's your phone. Very nice to have that. But the way that they get their initial configuration is from a central server, and that central server very commonly sends over the configuration file using a protocol called the trivial file transfer protocol. It's trivial because it doesn't require any username or password. It just sends the traffic back and forth. This is not a trick. This is not a trick question. This could not be more straightforward. If this is a trick question, you need to go back to your port numbers and do a lot more studying with port numbers. Make sure you're familiar with those. This question did not ask about FTP. FTP is a very different protocol than TFTP. And maybe that's why you're saying it's trick, because that's there you put a T in front of it and it's FTP, but there's a T and now it's TFTP. That's tricky. In some ways, you're right. That part kind of is tricky because they are two different protocols. FTP, a much more functional protocol. There's authentication methodologies. It allows you to configure and set up different directories and delete files. A lot of functionality with FTP. It uses TCP/20 and TCP/21. But the protocol we were interested in was the trivial file transfer protocol, which uses UDP69, a protocol that is very specifically designed for uses like this that are relatively trivial, where we just want to copy a file. We don't want to put in a username. We don't want to put a password. We don't need to set up any directory structure. We don't need to delete any files. I just need to transfer a file. I just need a very simple file transfer protocol. Very simple. In fact, it would be trivial in how simple it was. And in fact, the UDP69 is the protocol used for this trivial file transfer protocol. In fact, 51% of you did choose C, UDP69. Now you'll notice for B, I guess if there was a trick, there's your trick. For B, TCP/20 and TCP/21 are the port numbers associated with the FTP, file transfer protocol, in being able to do that. So make sure that you do know exactly what the differences are between those two, because you may be asked about that. UDP 161, for those of you familiar with SNMP, that's a way to do metrics, grab metrics and information, or even control the configuration of devices on your network, used primarily for infrastructure monitoring. We have TCP/22, which would be more of an SSH type connection, a secure shell for your console. And then we've got TCP 5060. Okay, if there's a little trick, maybe it's that one. 5060 is one of the protocols very commonly used in voice over IP communication, in the actual making of the phone call and being able to do that. But in our particular case, we weren't even at a place where we needed to make the phone call. Only thing in here was this happened to be a VoIP device. This could have been anything. It could have been a file server. It could have been a workstation. It could have been anything that could do TFTP. In fact, very often there would be, if you were upgrading a switch, very commonly you use TFTP to take a file that's on your workstation and upload it to the switch. Uses TFTP to do that. Why would you use TFTP instead of FTP? FTP seems to be more common. FTP is everywhere. And the programs you use for FTP are at the command prompt. There's plenty of utilities you can get for FTP, but FTP has so much more overhead associated with it. You have to have an authentication process with a username and password. You have to have something in the program that allows you to manage the folders and the files, to add files and delete files. TFTP is not faster, but it's much more streamlined. It's a much smaller application. There's much less overhead. It's a much simpler function in being able to have that there. So it's much easier to build as a utility, stick it on a machine, have it available in there. So that's why we would commonly use TFTP, because it's the right solution for this. And why would you put so much more functionality in? Why would you need a username and password? Why would you do FTP when TFTP is so much better, so much well suited for this? That's why. That's why if you just need to get from point A to point B, you get a bicycle. Do you need a diesel truck for that? No, you're not hauling a truck. You're not hauling a boat. You just want to get from point A to point B. Well, I'll hop on a bicycle. We'll go over there. You know, that's the thought process that goes into this and why we do that. And that's, in this case, why we choose UDP69, our TFTP. That is the right answer if you're somebody who is trying to transfer files and be able to get information from point A to point B. Now, for those of you familiar with the Network Plus exam, I've mentioned all the way through this that you need to be able to understand everything expected of you on this exam before you walk in. And the best way to do that is to go to your exam objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, or type into the Google machine CompTIA Exam Objectives. Make sure you download these. They will tell you everything you need to know. A lot of people will come to me and they'll say, I have a list of 100 port numbers. I've memorized about 70 of them. Is that going to be enough for the exam? And I say, well, on the exam objectives, you only have about a handful. You only have about 20, 22. There's not that many. There's not 70. There's not 100. They're all listed for you in the exam objectives. Those are the only ones you need to know. So that is the important part of this, is knowing what is expected of you whenever you walk in the door. And this exam objectives is what is expected of you when you walk into the exam. This is also something that is incredibly helpful at the beginning of your studies and incredibly helpful at the end. It's a nice checklist before you walk into your exam room to see if you're really ready. It's a nice sanity check. So make sure you're familiar with that. We do one of these Network Plus study groups every month. The next one's going to be at May 15th, 2019. You can always find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar. And I've got a list there. Next week, in fact, 1 week from today, is my Security Plus study group. So I'll have another round of Q&A available for that. Stick around for the next hour. I'll take questions from the chat room. I'll take questions from the phone lines. You can Skype in with a question if you'd like. We'll do whatever you'd like. I'll answer almost anything that you ask. In the meantime, of course, you can always go to Twitter. I've got a Twitter question every Tuesday as my Network Plus question. And you can go back and look at those at professormesser.com/Twitter. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube side. I mentioned this. You always hear people mention, please subscribe and please hit the bell. These types of things are so important. And click the like button, the thumbs up button if you like a video. The reason we always say that is because the people at YouTube are watching that. And it does help. I have a person now I can talk to at YouTube, and I was not able to do that before. But through your support and your subscriptions and you clicking that like button, actually it makes a huge difference. So thank you so much for that. Don't forget about my course notes available at professormesser.com/MPCN or MPCN7. I think I've got it in both places now. And of course, check the calendar for the next one of these. Oh, let's do a CEU. Thank you for mentioning it. For those of you that like to get a continuing education credit email from me for watching this, I'll give you 1 hour of a live study group webinar category. I think CompTIA calls it. You can do this by going to the top or the bottom of the website, clicking the Contact Us link, putting your name, email address, perhaps in the subject line, if you could even put that this was the August it's the August study group. It's not the August, but the April 2019 study group. And perhaps even in the subject line, if you could put the secret word of the month, which is TFTP, that would help me a lot. And then if you'd like to put anything else in the actual body of the message, you could do that as well. I'm the one reading through these. I'm more than happy to read those. I can't necessarily respond to every single one of them, but I do read every single one of them you send in. So it'll be a good place to go to make sure you do that. Make sure you follow those instructions. Do not send me a direct email. You have to know that that was the process we went through. That was part of earning the CEU. So make sure we do that. We've got plenty more to come. Stick around for the next hour. I've got plenty of Q&A that we're going to be doing through the Q&A that through the call-in, through the I've also got, through Skype, through the chat room. We've got lots of ways to do this, and we'd love to have you here for that as well. Thanks for joining us on this first hour of the study group. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Let's see if I can get my screens to show information on here. We'll be able to step through this. Let me get the phone line up and running. So bear with me for just a moment while I get my Skype running, while I click the right things, while I have stuff up on my laptop, while I click, and then we'll have the phone lines up and running. You can also put questions into the chat room at professormesser.com/live. That's an important one. If you're watching on the YouTube, you'll notice there's no chat there. Well, that's where the chat is. It's on my website at professormesser.com/live. Let me first turn my show on. I also have to call into my own show. This call-in piece is all done in the cloud. So I am in the cloud now, and I'm going to connect to the cloud, and I'm going to dial into the cloud, and we're going to do this. So let me type a few things in on my screen and click a button, and it tells me
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
I think we know that that's not right. It's like an ATM machine. Let's have a look and see if I did this correctly.
Welcome.
See, I did do it correctly because I am welcome to have all of this here. So you're welcome to call in. Let's see if I can get the call in piece up and running. I didn't cut it right to have that there. So I need to put that on my side as well. Let's see if I can get those up and running. So I think I did put this up. I need to make sure that you can see exactly what it's going to be for the media. Do I have this here? I do. Let's move some things out of the way on my screen. I'll put in what we need to see on my downstream key, which is not showing the right key. It's going to be my media player 2. Let's see if that's the right one that's going to be there. There it is. There's our phone number if you want to call in. It's in anywhere in the continental U.S. is 855-785-7545. You can also on Skype call in for free. No Skype minutes required by putting a +1 at the beginning. It's +1 855-785-RJ45. You can also put questions into the chat room. So I'm more than happy to answer those questions in the chat room as well. So feel free. You're putting a few in there right now. We can talk about some of those. And it doesn't have to be about Network Plus. It could be about career. It could be about video games. It could be about something you saw in the news. It doesn't matter to me. This is an after show. It's really open phone lines so that you can ask questions of whatever you'd like to do. Let's very quickly, as a matter of fact, try it out. Let's go to the 847 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Ian, and I'm calling from Illinois.
Thank you for calling. Ian, what can we do for you?
So basically, a virtual IP address is like a redundant IP address.
As you can imagine, this is a term that is used in many places. So the question specifically from Ian was about virtual IPs. Sometimes you'll hear these referred to as VIPs as an abbreviation, the virtual IP address. Whenever we're configuring IP address on an Ethernet card, we're assigning an address to it. If you look at the Ethernet card that's on your laptop or your desktop computer, you may see that it has a 192.168.1.7 address associated with it. We've taken an address and assigned it to that physical interface card that's on our computer. But in the world of networking, there are some interfaces that aren't actually in the physical world. These interfaces are virtual interfaces, the VIPs that you're referring to. And that is one definition of a VIP. For example, you might have a VLAN, and in that VLAN, you create out of the ether, you create a virtual IP address that you can then use to associate with that particular VLAN. The term VIP is one that's also commonly used for network address translation. If you're doing NAT configurations inside of a router or a firewall, sometimes a virtual IP address is what we would associate with one of those addresses associated with the network address translation process, especially if we're translating to an address that doesn't actually exist anywhere on a physical interface. And sometimes when you're dealing with VLANs, you can build out a lot of physical interfaces and then or virtual interfaces and then assign virtual IP addresses to those. So the term virtual IP really has a different context depending on what you're doing. And of course, in the world of virtualization, when you have all of these servers and services running on a system, they don't have any physical IP addresses. You could technically call each one of those virtual IPs as well. So I guess it just depends on the context as well, Ian.
Okay, so, and another thing maybe for Network Plus questions on your website, is it possible if you could do them a little more often?
Yeah, we need to update those. They're an archive of the questions that we commonly do during our study group. And I think it's about time for an update. Usually, as you probably see on the website at professormesser.com/popquiz, they're done in these 20-section chunks. And I think it's about time to add another couple 20 sections to that. I would agree, Ian. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so last question. So, RC4 and CCMP is used on WPA. Well, actually, it's TKIP and RC4 are used on WPA, while CCMP and AES are used on WPA2.
I think that's off the top of my head. That sounds about right.
So, like TKIP and CCMP are more like integrity checking.
Yeah, you do find, and these are important considerations for those people that are trying to figure out what these abbreviations are referring to. The TKIP and the RC4 are the ones associated with WPA, and the CCMP and the AES are the protocols that you commonly find in WPA2. Those are all the wireless encryption protocols. In reality, of course, you're not going to find WPA really running anywhere these days. WPA2 is the one that you commonly see in practice. But occasionally you do run across one of these legacy devices that's running some of those older configurations. And it is separated in a very broad term. You can think of the RC4 and the AES as the function that's actually doing the encryption, but you also need some way to verify that it came from the right place. So, of course, we've got a way to validate, have a signature associated with those, so we know that the communication from point A to point B is something that nobody can get in the middle and perhaps replay or intercept any of that. And that's what the TKIP and the CCMP is primarily used for, among other things.
And then, thanks, friend. Then RC4 and AES are more used for encryption.
Those are your
across the
encryption
wireless
protocols.
network.
Absolutely. Correct.
All right, so thanks for your help, and see if I could join again next month.
Ian, I appreciate the call. Thanks a lot. And those are good calls because those are spot on with the things that you need to know in the CompTIA exam objectives. So, of course, especially wireless. You'll find the wireless questions. It's only a small section of the exam, but it seems like you get a lot of wireless questions in the exam for some reason. I don't know why that is, but that seems to be the way that it goes. Back to the chat room. Let's get some questions in here. As soon as I move some windows out of the way, I can read all of them. So let's see what people are saying. So one good thing that people are talking about there's so many good questions coming in. So I'm going to roll next to a question where people are talking about more career. And this is a question that comes up quite often associated with really certifications in general. So somebody is talking specifically of Network Plus, and they'll talk to people in the industry, and some people say, you don't need Network Plus, you need the Cisco series of certifications, a CCNA, for example. You need the CCNA. Don't worry about Network Plus, get your CCNA. Or people will say, don't worry about A Plus or Network Plus, get your Microsoft certification. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for Microsoft certification. Those jobs will make you more money. Well, if that's the philosophy, why are you even looking at those? Why aren't you getting your CCIE? That's the one that makes the most money in Cisco. Why aren't you starting there? Which is really the response I always like to give back to folks that say that, which is you have to start somewhere with this. And perhaps more importantly, you have to start at the place that is going to give you the next step along your career path. What you'll find is that the Network Plus and the CCNA are the ones that most people will argue about in the networking world. Don't worry about Network Plus, get your CCNA. The CCNA is going to cover everything anyway from the Network Plus. The reality is, of course, those two exams are light years apart. Those are two completely different certifications. They're saying you don't need a car, you want a building. You don't want to get a pencil, you actually need an avocado. Wait, those are two different things. I need a pencil and an avocado. I need both of those. I need a car and a building. I need both of those things. And the reality is you might. There's the CCNA series of certifications, and it's more than just one certification. When people are talking this way, they're really referring to the CCNA routing and switching certification is, in most practical terms, two separate exams that are incredibly complex from a networking perspective. They are light years different in difficulty than the Network Plus exam. And to compare them as if they are comparable does a disservice to the certifications, and it does a disservice to you as someone who's trying to figure out where the next step is going to be in your career. You should be focusing on, what do I want to do next? And then you'll be able to make the right decision on what certification you need to get. Maybe your next step is just getting a help desk position. Maybe your next step is getting a job working as a network administrator. Maybe your next step is getting a job working with a security team. Well, there will be different paths for each one of those. One of the things that you can do to help figure out what that path is going to be is to ask people in the industry, what do you need to do that kind of job? And perhaps one of the best ways to do it is to do your own research. Go out to the places that have these job postings available, the monster.coms, the dice.coms of the world. Go out to the indeed.coms and look at those job postings. What do they say you need to have for that particular job? Some places would like you to be certified, and they may say, we would like you to have a Network Plus certification. They might say, we would like you to have a Cisco CCNA routing and switching certification. Or they might not list a certification at all. This may be a philosophical reason from the employer's perspective. They may not want to hire somebody who has a CCNA routing and switching because they know they have to pay them more. And they might also realize this job doesn't really require the skill set that you would have as somebody who has a Cisco CCNA routing and switching. Or they may say, we'd like to hire you without a certification and teach you as you go. Or they may say, we'll hire somebody, but we'd like to at least have you at Network Plus level. We'll pay you for somebody who's a Network Plus level, but there's really no need in this position to have a Cisco routing and switching. So that's the piece that you really want to focus on is, what do you want to do? And then how do you get there? That's why some of the things I've mentioned on earlier study groups is that you don't know until you start talking to people who've done this. And I highly recommend, if you're interested in networking, go to your local Cisco user group meeting. There's a lot of great networking people there that know a lot about networking. And more importantly, they're already working in these jobs. And you can ask them, I'm interested in getting the type of job that you have. What's the path to get there if I'm here? And they will tell you, well, get this certification, get this certification, go to this particular level of experience, get a job working doing this, work there for a year, then move into this. And then you can say, what if I want to work in your company, what's the minimum I need to be in that help desk position? And they'll tell you, or they'll point you to the person that knows, and they'll find out. That's a great place to gather information, not just online, but in person. Plus, you've now met the people that work there. And if you do happen to get an interview there, you could say, yes, I know in your networking group, I met Bob. He works in the networking group. We go to the Cisco user group meeting. That's where I met him and learned about your organization and what you do here. And it's very interesting, and I'd love to have a job and see where those things go. The fact that you would know someone there actually counts for a lot. In our industry, really in any industry, and you've heard the term, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That really is not really referring to you doing something easier because you know someone. It's about you being familiar with someone who's already there. My first job that I got in the industry, I didn't know anyone who worked there. It's surprising I got the job, but it was a low-level job. What could go wrong? They were taking a chance, and if it didn't work out, it was no big deal. But I met a lot of people on that job, and over the next part of my career, which lasted, well, it continues to go on, I guess you could say, but I had maybe 15 to 20 different jobs in that 20 to 25 year range. In every other job I went to, I knew somebody who worked there. And maybe that was coincidence. I think not. I think there is an actual thing happening there that people can trust people they already know. They knew I worked hard. They knew I would come in when I needed to be there. They knew if they set an appointment with me that I was there, that during that appointment, we knew what we were going to do. And then I did it and everything worked out great. And if something didn't work right, we fixed it. There's always those things that happen. People are watching, and someone who works hard and does the right things, they show up on time, they work hard, they leave late, you're going to do well. So if you apply yourself, you really can't go wrong with that. We got more questions in the chat room. Back to the phones real quick, though. Let's go to 540. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? caller.
Hello, Professor. My name is Roberto, and I spoke to you in the last training course that you were doing for the A+.
Welcome back.
How are you doing? Thank you.
What can we do for you today?
Yeah, I have a question. I heard that the first caller asked about a virtual IP, and I was just studying yesterday for the Security Plus exam, and it mentions A+, for the Network Plus.
Sure.
And it also mentions that virtual IP, when it's talking about configuring multiple computers or servers, in this case, to use a single IP. So I think this is also like considered virtual IP. It may use some kind of protocols. I heard of two protocols. One is a Cisco protocol. I don't remember the other one, but these are the main two protocols that are used for this, like to connect multiple servers in a virtual kind of a one single IP.
Yeah, you'll hear that term virtual
right,
IPs used so often. There was another example that came to mind after that call was one where you're configuring redundancy in an enterprise. Maybe you have two separate servers configured. Maybe you have two separate routers configured. And instead of pointing people to a physical router, you point them to this virtual IP. And that virtual IP address is one that no matter whether the router, you have multiple routers, whether the routers go away or show up, you never have to reconfigure the workstation to point to a different router because they're always pointing to that virtual IP address that you could build up on any router or any server you wanted to at any time. So it adds some flexibility with configurations as well.
Right, that's kind of a like load balancing too, or specifically like redundancy. It can be done in switches and routers.
Oh, yes.
Switches.
Extremely common. The router redundancy protocol from Cisco and many of the other open source redundancy protocols for layer 3 use virtual IPs all the time.
All right. So we have to be more like concerning about the focus of the question in the case of the exam and see what they are talking about to specifically know if they are talking about the virtual IP or in a virtualized environment, the creating the virtual connections or virtual routers or stuff like that, or if they are talking more like in the specific part of this, which is also, I think, part of the NAT, right?
Yeah, whenever you start looking at questions on the exam, they're not going to leave these questions vague. They're not going to mention virtual IP without giving you some type of context. So you don't have to worry about that part. Just have in your mind what a virtual IP is and how it might apply in those different environments, and you're going to be just fine.
Well, thank you very much, Professor, for your time, and have a good day.
I appreciate it. Take care. I appreciate the call. Thanks for calling back. There's other questions that came in through the chat room. What course of study would I recommend for someone who wants to be a network administrator? And as someone who's a former network administrator, my path was probably the same as many people. I wanted to get into networking. I was working as someone who was doing workstation administration, and I was very curious about the networking side of it. One of the things that I did was read as much as I could about what was happening at the network level. I happened to be in a position that the place I was working had, at the time, a unique tool called the sniffer. Getting packet captures off of the network, we take for granted these days. There's Wireshark, there's TCP dump, there's all these programs that are available everywhere to gather packets. Back in the day, we didn't have that. And I started looking at these packet captures and trying to understand what these conversations were doing. And the more I got into it, the more I realized the intricacies and the complexities behind the routing protocols, the port information going back and forth and how they transfer files, and the application traffic itself. And for me, the more I understood about the packets, the more I could apply it back to what was really happening on the screen. So that was one thing I think that helped me a lot. These days, you've got some very specific certifications that you can use to help get you to that level. For example, Network Plus is a good starting point. Some people feel that they want to skip over the Network Plus and go to the CCENT, the Cisco Certified Entry-Level Technician's Exam. The CCENT is probably the most comparable to the Network Plus, but even, as I mentioned before, those Cisco certifications go well beyond the Network Plus in terms of content and complexity. But that is one that is a good starting point. People like to see that path: Network Plus, CCENT, CCNA routing and switching. I think if you did all three of those, you would have an extremely good foundation of networking that you can apply not just to a Cisco environment, but to other places as well. Not everybody runs Cisco. The majority of organizations run Cisco, but also organizations run other things other than Cisco. But if you go through some of those Cisco certifications and now you've already configured these switches as spanning tree, you've already worked with routers and configured static routes, you've already set up IP subnets and VLANs. Well, it's exactly the same on a Cisco device as it is something else. The command line might be a little different, but the way you set it up and the way that it operates is exactly the same. So getting that foundation in place can really help you a lot if you're someone who's planning to move into networking and understand what's going on. Those are pretty good starting places. And if you can do some packet captures, I think that puts a little layer on top of that really takes you beyond the basics of routing and switching and really gets you understanding what's happening over the network. Once you get packet captures down, you now have the ability to understand things at a completely different level. And a lot of people, I don't think, understand that level of visibility that you get from a packet capture. There have been times in my career where there's been a problem. I brought in my sniffer to do a packet capture, and people are saying, "What are you doing? Why are you bringing in packet captures? We're having a problem with this voice over IP integration into a web server. You should be working with the voice over IP and the web server to fix this." And I said, the only way you're going to know what's going on is if you can look into the packets and figure that out. And indeed, that's exactly how you're able to interpret that and figure those things out. So that's one that has helped me through my career as well to get those going. Let's look at other questions coming through the chat room. There is other questions here. I want to scroll back up because I saw a good one come through. There were some examples. Some folks were looking at these today. In fact, I was going through these myself because I'm coming up on doing command lines on the 221002 exam, and I'm working on those videos now. And someone's mentioning on practice exams, I can determine the utility commands when I see the results. But when it's put in a performance-based question or scenario-based question, it can be confusing. I did some of those today. We talked about understanding what the IP address is of a domain name. There's really only one best way to do that. That's with dig from the list that I gave. So there were scenarios where people are using netstat and NBTstat. So there's two different, they seem like they're similar in name, but actually quite different in operation and how they would operate. I think the place where you have to focus on those two things, netstat is a generic utility that shows you what your device is connected to. There's netstat available, of course, in Linux, Mac OS, and even in Windows, although commonly it's not one you commonly see in Windows, but it's there and available if you want to run netstat. NBTstat, the NetBIOS stat, is really talking about Windows communication, which of course only happens in Windows. NBTstat is not something you would use if you were in Linux or Mac OS. It's a function that allows you to do queries on devices based on their, what Microsoft calls their NetBIOS name, which goes back to the world when we used to run this all over a NetBIOS protocol. These days, of course, we're running it all over IP. But the command still exists as NBTstat. But for example, we were talking earlier about getting the IP address of a server, and we were going out to the domain name server to be able to get that. But what if you didn't have access to the domain name server? You're on a Windows network and you needed the IP address of a server. You can use the NBTstat command to query that server directly and get that information. It's sort of a Windows language communication. So if I had to split those up, that's the ones that I would split up. The best advice I can give you for those command line questions is to do as much at the command line as you can. I always mention there's 4 things you should do to really prepare yourself for these exams. Get a good book, watch some videos, do plenty of Q&A, and get lots of hands-on. And this is the hands-on piece. Go through ping everything you can. Run a bunch of trace routes. Get familiar with traceroute. Run some NBTstat commands and see what those do. Run netstat and see what information you get. But you doing it rather than you watching it or you reading about it is a different way to learn. It fires different synapses in your brain. It solidifies things differently. It's almost like muscle memory, like playing the piano or riding a bike. You sort of do it automatically after a while. So being able to actually type that at the command, query things on your own network, see what the results are, and perhaps more importantly, really understand the results of what you're getting. If you perform a ping and it gives you information back on that ping, step through every part of what it's telling you. Often we're doing a ping just to see if a device is there. Boom, we got the device, we got the information back, we got a ping back, we're gone. There's a lot of information on that ping that we received. There's those timestamps and information contained within the results is perhaps more important than you even knowing how to run the command. So run a netstack command, have an understanding of what those results are. Run the mbtstack command, get the results from that. Make sure you interpret the results the best way and being able to do that. In the chat room, people are saying, I said get a good book, so what's a good book? And that's a different answer for everybody. The best thing I can offer to tell you is to take advantage of Amazon's ability to read the actual book, an excerpt of the actual book. So go out to Amazon, look at the different Network Plus books that are there, and start reading through a chapter of one or two or three or four of them, or all of them that you can find. Get a feel for the author's style. See if it's a style that works for you. See, some authors write in a very technical tone. Some authors are very jovial in the way they write. Those two styles attract people in different ways. Some people like the more technical. Some people like the more jovial. Some people like a good mix in the middle. And different authors have different voices. So go out and read through those books that are all on Amazon. Have a look at the qualifications. Have a look at how people have rated them. Usually, most of these books get pretty good ratings. Most Network Plus books out there are pretty good. And one of the things I even tell people is you probably want to think about getting more than one, because what you would learn in one book may be taught to you in a different way in another book that works better for you, and vice versa. So after going through your Network Plus book, if you think, I don't know if I really got it, you may want to think about getting a second book to do that. And of course, you've got other tools to pull from. There's plenty of videos out there. Mine are certainly available. There's others out there that you could read through and watch. There's plenty of Q&A available. Make sure you get those. And of course, the hands-on. So the books there's no one best book that I can point to. I used to be able to support the GTS Learning books. GTS Learning was bought by CompTIA, and now it's all CompTIA, and I don't have a relationship with them anymore because GTS Learning no longer exists as a company. It's all the CompTIA side. But as I understand it, they still have the GTS Learning books, and certainly the author of the GTS Learning books is still working there. So those may be good books too. That's another one you could probably look at. I just have not seen them, so I can't speak directly to them. So I generally don't read a lot of those books. I'm usually creating my own content. It takes all of my time, so I don't do a lot of book reviews, unfortunately. I can't really point at one and say, I like this one better for this and this one better for that. I'll leave that up to you. Maybe that's something I'll be able to do in the future, and at least have some options available to you. But right now, that's your best bet, I think, in having those available. And this sort of brings us to the next question in the chat room, which is, all right, I've got a book, but the book doesn't follow the same order as the videos. In fact, nobody's book follows the same order as anybody's videos. And this is kind of a problem in the industry in general, is that the books are written from an author's perspective of being able to educate you in a particular way, in a particular order of topics. The CompTIA exam objectives don't do this at all. They don't start you at the beginning. They don't take you through a path of learning. It's simply a list of objectives of things you should know. Now, I used to create my videos. This is many, many years ago. I used to create my videos in an order that was very much like the books, where I would create my video in a way that the first video was more introductory, and then it took you through harder and more complex topics as it went along. And it did it in an order that I thought made sense for someone who needed to learn networking. The problem is that people can't find what they want that way. So all of my videos are numbered to match the exam objectives. And I do this because most of the books you will read will tell you at the beginning of the chapter, this chapter covers exam objectives 1.2, 2.7, 3.4. So now you can find all of my videos on 1.2, 2.7, and 3.4, and you can watch those videos. So it's easy to cross-reference now. You're able to find exactly what you're looking for. Why is there no book from Professor Messer? Because writing a book takes an incredibly long amount of time. It's a huge amount of time to be able to write a book. It is a relatively involved process. It is heads down, writing. There is a knack to it. And in the past, I have authored books on Nmap, for example. And it was just not something that clicked for me. I enjoyed making videos more than I enjoyed writing books. So that's why I don't have a book, because not my thing, brother. Not my thing to write a book. I'm happier doing the videos. There's plenty of writing to do videos. There's plenty of content. There's plenty of production involved in doing those videos, but the videos work for me. Just not my thing to have a book. There's plenty of good books out there. We do not need another Network Plus book. Trust me, out there. I'll probably, 2 years from now, you'll see me release a book. You'll say, remember when yeah, I know. I think right now I'm going to focus on the videos, and we'll let someone else focus on the books to have all of that there. And there's other things I can create. So there's other Network Plus content I want to create, some of it in a book version. So hopefully I will get to that point this calendar year that you'll see more Network Plus content that's book related, but not a textbook, so to speak. Not where I want to focus. And I think most of you have told me, more videos, please. Just keep pumping out the videos. Just as they say in the chat room, okay, we'll make some Cisco videos. Okay, Cisco videos are a great idea as well. It's all about time right now. I do have Cisco course notes for the CCENT, or what they call the ICND1 exam. So I do have those Cisco course notes. I'd love to do Cisco course notes for the ICND2. I'd love to create Cisco videos. It's really more of a physics problem at this point. I'm currently finishing up the A+ series, which is really 2 separate certifications. So, but that's another challenge too, is do Cisco videos make sense? There's already Cisco videos out there. Some of them are pretty good. So do we want to make another set? Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. I don't know. Why not Linux Plus? There's the new Linux Plus certification coming out from CompTIA. That's a very big departure from previous Linux Plus. It's now a CompTIA specific. It's CompTIA owned and operated Linux Plus certification. Why not set up videos on that? I'd love to do that. So I have a big list of things, and I'm never quite sure exactly which one of those that I'm going to cover next. But as we get closer to finishing up one project, I tend to realize what's coming next. So even I don't know what the next thing is going to be. I just have a list of those things. So somebody in the chat room says they're interested in purchasing Certmaster 1001 and 1002. Does that cover the 901, 902? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Certmaster is a CompTIA thing. So ask CompTIA. They'll tell you. I have no idea. I don't cover any of that. I'm not a CompTIA partner, by the way. I don't have a ongoing relationship with CompTIA. I don't talk to them. They don't talk to me much. And we say hi every now and then. The people I've talked to there are great, nice people, but I just don't have a formal business relationship with them at all. And they don't send me their products, and I don't look at their products. And I guess if they would, I guess I would look at them. I don't know. It's one of those things that somebody sent you something out of the blue and you don't work with them. Oh, thanks for doing that for those. It's one of those, I guess. How does my continuing education work? My continuing education doesn't work at all, so I don't have any. There is continuing education from CompTIA if you're going to renew your certification that they go through. And in fact, you don't need me to send you technically an email that says you watch this for an hour. CompTIA will trust you on that. I like to send you an email that says you watched it, so that if they do audit you, and they do audit people from time to time, you've got information from me that says you must have watched this because you gave me the super secret code word, and this is a digital email, digitally signed email that you can verify really came from me. And so that's an hour that you're locked into. It's guaranteed. So that's one of those that you'll run into is the continuing education. The CompTIA website has a incredibly big section on continuing education because it's an incredibly big topic. There are many different ways to renew your certification. There are many different continuing education options associated with that. There's some options that you can renew your certification without taking an exam and without gathering any continuing education credits. So there's things you can do that you don't even have to watch this. So sorry, we're now an hour and 50 minutes in. Yeah, you may not have even had to watch this. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully there's something better than just getting a CEU out of this. I would hate for you to be stuck here doing that for nothing. Is browsing Tor illegal or not safe to do from home? Tor, the Onion router is what Tor is. For those of you that have not seen the Onion router is really just an encrypted VPN tunnel that is peer-to-peer, a peer-to-peer encrypted tunnel. The real question is, a lot of people use Tor to be able to access materials that are in another country that are restricted from your country. Maybe they use it for anonymous use. So you're browsing from an anonymous way that your IP address is hopping through other IP addresses and finally coming out of the Tor network. So you are effectively anonymous all the way through. The anonymity associated with Tor is somewhat speculative because there are researchers that have found ways to tie back to you regardless of your use of Tor. So there is some interesting capabilities there. Some people use Tor to access illegal things on the internet in a hopes that they will remain anonymous. That's not a guarantee either. So first, don't access illegal stuff. That might be helpful. The other thing is that Tor provides you with some level of security, especially maybe if you're in a coffee shop. But once you get to that end node, you may have lost your ability to be private. So do I have a best guess how they could track you? Yeah, there are plenty of documentation out there that talks about how they track people through Tor. Sometimes it's based on a fingerprint from a browser. Sometimes it's based on the content you're accessing. And sometimes it's based on being able to see the unencrypted data once it exits the Tor end node. So that's the thing. It's encrypted up to a point, and then after that point, it's not encrypted anymore. So that's why there's always a limitation we have with encryption unless you're doing end-to-end, and it's a different kind of encryption. What do I think about Wi-Fi 6? Is that what they're going to end up calling it? An awful name, Wi-Fi 6. I guess they had to call it something, right? What do I think about it? Well, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I've read about it. I don't know. Is it going to work? I don't know. I have no idea. Sounds interesting. But that's one of those that we're going to have to see how it comes out. We got to, and I go back, I sound very negative. What a pessimist this Professor Messer is. Well, for those of you that want to rewind back to the days of 802.11 AC and what was promised and what finally shipped were two very different things. And it took years to finally start implementing the things that we were promised out of 802.11 AC because it's an incredibly complex architecture. Of course, it's going to take years to roll out. We need for technology to come along. We need to test this technology. It's a new way of doing things. It's going to take time. So we'll see what the first integration of the next level of Wi-Fi is going to be and go with that. You know, there's so many. Wireless is an interesting place right now, not just on the Wi-Fi side, but on the carrier side. It's very interesting right now to see what's going on. Some might say we might not need Wi-Fi again because of what we're doing on the LTE side. Some people say that we need more Wi-Fi than ever. Some people say, why are we doing Wi-Fi at all? You should be directly connected. There's pluses and minuses for all of those. So it just depends on where you go with that. And I think from what you're doing with Wi-Fi, I think it will be a natural progression. We'll have to see what the different offerings are when they finally release it. But it's about time for a new Wi-Fi, isn't it? We need some extra speeds. We need some extra utility. We need more functionality. And so it's a natural progression of what we're doing. It's going to be great. And to get that, we'll finish this up with a phone call. 612. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Let me click the talk button. Whoops. And I think we missed them. I think they decided they've had enough of us, and who can blame them? What a perfect ending to a study group, isn't it? To be able to do that. I think so. I think whenever we start breaking these down, that is the perfect ending. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here in the first hour where we did our Q&A. We'd love to have you here next month or even next week when we've got a Security Plus study group. You're welcome to come back and join us for that as well. Of course, we do a Network Plus study group every month. Please come back for those. All the replays are available on the website at professormesser.com. Thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you for your support from the study groups and from the course notes that you buy. You're able, even just watching the videos is support. So thank you for watching those as well. And thank you for being here. We will see you next month on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.